my name is Nancy Rebecca, and I'm a registered nurse, but I work full time as a clairvoyant psychic. And one of the things that, questions that people ask all the time is, how do I work in that kind of combination with my nursing skill of working as a registered nurse for over 25 years and now working as a full-time psychic for 25 years. It's like, how do I combine those two and apply it to the work that I do or the way that I work? So the thing that I find quite fascinating is definitely the health of the energy field and working with the spirit and how the spirit and the energy field can impact physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health. So I thought I would just share a little bit of a story that with a client that I just had last week. So I had received a call from someone inquiring about a 17-year-old who was suffering from depression since the age of 7. And it was it was chronic depression, but it's like, who at 7 years old gets depressed? And unfortunately, a lot of young kids are getting depressed these days. A lot of young kids are having anxiety and panic attacks. And so here we have presented this 17-year-old who has experienced depression longer in her life as, how do I want to say that? 7 years without depression and 10 years with depression. So it's like she's lived with depression for so long that she doesn't even know what it's like to not be depressed. Can you imagine that? And I imagine that there's a lot of you that can't imagine that. So I got the call and they said, do you think that you can help her? And I said, well, have her come in. Let me take a look at her energy field and let's see what I can do to help. So she came in, and really this very delightful young woman, very kind of self-assured in some ways, but she definitely was nervous. I mean, most people who come in to see me are nervous because they're not quite sure what's going to happen. But the other thing is she was a little bit of apathetic because she had seen many therapists since the age of 7. She had seen many doctors. I think she was telling me she's been on maybe 5 different types of antidepressants. I think she's been on a couple of antidepressants at the same time, but none of them seem to work. So she just keeps moving. She keeps trying to cope. But then I ask her, do you ever have depression that's so severe that you're suicidal? And she just answered very clearly, yeah, all the time. And I said, well, do you think about suicide as this potential way to get relief? Or do you actually make a plan? And so she said, most of the time I do kind of think about it as, wow, it would be so nice just to kind of end things and get that sense of relief. But she said, no, I've never actually came up with a plan, but there are times where I've gotten really close to thinking that I might come up with a plan. And so when I asked her kind of in that 10-year process, like how many times has she gotten close like that? And she said, maybe 2 or 3 times. So, but when I ask her how often, because see, that's kind of the advantage of me being a nurse. I kind of know how to ask these inquiring questions, how to do an assessment to really pinpoint where someone is. And I'm not a therapist, so I'm always very clear to say I'm not a therapist. I don't do therapy. But I wanted to find some ways to kind of measure, just how much this impacts her life at 17 years old. So she said she probably has those severe drops about once every 3 months. So about 4 times a year on medication. And so then she went on to say about 6 months ago, it was really, really, really bad, almost a crisis, and they thought they might have to hospitalize her. So clearly it was time to kind of call in someone who does alternative therapy. So I work as a clairvoyant, meaning I can look at her energy field. And I use the word psychic is a little bit more precise than intuitive hits. To me, intuition is a little bit more of hunches, where the way that I work, I can get much more precise. So it was interesting to work with her because I could definitely see the depression in her energy field. So we have an aura that goes around our body, and we have chakras that kind of feeds energy to our physical body. And I could see this, it was kind of the way depression looks. It looks like black mucus or gray mucus in the energy field. And if you can imagine, let's just say your whole body's filled with mucus, your whole aura is like a sack filled with mucus. You just walk around and you're just kind of this, it's like you're trying to walk through mud all the time. And just trying to walk through mud, you feel really fatigued. And I know there's a lot of you out there that are listening to this recording and you're like, I know exactly what this feels like. So for me as a clairvoyant, I can see the thickness in the field. What was fascinating for me was I just started first by helping her to ground and by helping her to be able to start to release some of that heaviness. And then I keep checking in. It's like, are you feeling anything? Are you experiencing anything? And she said, nope, I just feel normal. I not normal, but she goes, no, I just feel the same. I feel the same. This is not uncommon with someone who's depressed because the layers of thick, mucousy depression and emotion is so thick that the body almost feels disconnected or numb. So it could be like, imagine that you are sitting there and you've got about 50 sopping wet blankets on you. And let's say I'm going to take off the first 5 blankets, but you still have 45 wet blankets on you. You're still going to feel heavy and depressed. So in the process when I'm working with her, I just start kind of peeling off the layers of depression. But I can peel off the layers, and if I don't get to the core reason why she began to get depressed in the first place, then the depression is just going to start building up again. So when I work as a clairvoyant psychic, that's what I do. I want to get to the underlying reasons. But she's a young woman, but she's really mature beyond her years, and she's mature because she's had to cope with this depression. So what was interesting, I would clear a little bit, and then I'd get a little bit of information to share with her, and then I'd clear a little bit, and I'd get a little bit more information. And she started to kind of lighten up because here I was, this woman that was looking at her, and she didn't have to tell me how she was feeling. I could express, because I could feel how she was feeling. I could see how she was feeling. I could know how she was feeling. And as I described it, she was like, wow, you really get me. And that's the thing about a lot of the clients that come in to see me. It's like for the first time, they're trying to explain to doctors and therapists, their mother, their father, their friends. They're trying to explain it, but they can't find the words. And then they come and sit in front of me, and it's like, wow, I'm really picking this up from how you're feeling. And they're like, wow, you get it. So that also gives a person a sense of relief. But I was able to identify for her, I was able to see that there was something that went on in childhood. So definitely her parents had divorced, and it's not uncommon. Children's parents divorce all the time, especially in this day and age. It's not enough to trigger depression. And both of her parents, are good parents. Her mother and father are good parents. They're doing the best that they can do. They're going to struggle at coping. They're going to make decisions that, if they were older and more mature, they might not make those decisions in the same way. I definitely, even as a parent, can say, oh my God, what was I thinking? But I was 26 years old, and it's like, I made decisions with my children that it was just like, wow, I just wouldn't do that now as a 59-year-old woman. So all that was pretty normal. But then there was some illness, and there was illness that had to do with leukemia with somebody in the family, and she was in that household as the dying process was happening. And then I was able to uncover a few other kind of early traumatizing events that didn't happen to her directly, but she was directly influenced by. And so I was able to kind of dismantle those memories, dismantle those traumas using the techniques that I learned in my own training, as well as that I teach in our own programs. And I was able to dismantle that, and that helped that process of shedding the depression even more. So when I went to the core, I asked to see where the core depression was stored. It was stored in her solar plexus chakra. The solar plexus chakra is chakra number 3, and it's about power, boundaries, self-esteem, and being able to illuminate your soul's light in your life. And that held the darkest, most depressive part of her depression. I was able to start dismantling that, and that's when she finally started saying, I feel lighter, I feel heavier, I feel lighter, I feel heavier. So what I was seeing was like this layer of depression would come up, fill up her aura. I would help it to clear, and then her aura would get really bright, and you could see the hope in her eyes. Her eyes started to kind of get lighter, like, wow, you might be able to actually help me. She didn't say that, but I could actually, kind of feel that coming from her. And so let's say I probably helped shed about 30 layers of depression. But then there gets to a point where you can only clear so much so fast, because your physical body now has to integrate the changes. Your physical body, her physical body, had been carrying around this weight for so long that it's like suddenly, if I release all of it at once, it can be too much. We kind of call that a healing crisis. I didn't want to throw her into a healing crisis, because I want her to ultimately feel better, to be able to connect with more hope. So we were able to get her settled and say, okay, that's going to be enough for this session. And so she sat there and she was like, wow, she kind of got a little bit of a smile on her face. And she said, wow, I'm actually feeling better. But you could tell that she wasn't going to give it too much credit, because can you imagine, after 10 years, you kind of give up hoping. So I could tell there was a little bit of that, but she made a little bit of a joke as she was leaving, and so I viewed that as a very good sign. And then she grabbed her car keys, she was about ready to go out to her car and leave. She turned around and she goes, can I give you a hug? And she gave me the biggest hug of all. And so those are the kinds of, that's why I tell people all the time I have the best job ever. So I work as a nurse, but my background is as a nurse. Working with the health of the energy field is my passion. Working as a clairvoyant, which means I can see the energy field and I can see what's going on in the energy field. And so I'm hoping that she's going to have some good results from this. I don't know, with chronic depression, sometimes it can take months. Sometimes it can take a full year of someone coming in for 3 or 4 or maybe up to 10 sessions to be able to clear some of that chronic depression. I most certainly do not say don't go on medication, because I have found when I work with people who are depressed that working in combination with the antidepressants can really help. And then once their field gets pretty clear, then they can work with their own physician and their therapist on cutting down the medication if their medical team makes that recommendation. That is something that I will never recommend, but I will most certainly be happy to work with their health team to kind of navigate that. But that's just one story. Thought that you all might enjoy that as an example of knowing the ways that I work and how I work. And I'll be happy to share more stories as they come up to kind of give you an idea about what you might come to work with: an intuitive worker, psychic worker, energy worker, Reiki worker. Those are the kinds of things that they can help you with. So if you want more information, just go to our website, intuitivemind.org. And if you have any other things that you'd like to hear about, just let me know. Thanks.